I'd like to talk about just how long it takes you to realize, like after, so I'm just getting help for military sexual trauma through the VA. It's taken me 8 years since it, and it's not because it's almost part of it is because I didn't realize it. I didn't understand that that's what was going on in some of the cases. So it's been like a journey recently to go through and, connect all the dots. And when you realize like that is why I was acting like that, that's why I was so crazy, like partying a lot. And it was kind of just coping.
Welcome to Your Story Doesn't End Here, the mental health podcast of military and veterans who refuse to be silenced. I'm your host, Rachel, and my mission with this podcast is to be a voice for those who don't have a voice, bring awareness to mental health issues, provide value and solutions, and to change the culture when it comes to mental health within the DoD organizations. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for coming back for another episode of Your Story Doesn't End Here. Today, we have the pleasure of having guest Jenna Carlton, the Millennial veteran, on the show. She is a Navy veteran who served as an aerographer's mate from 2013 to 2017. After getting out, she went to school and did an internship at the House Committee on Veterans Affairs, helping to make an impact on the veteran community. She soon found out that policy may not be the best route in her efforts of helping other veterans. Soon after, she started a Facebook support group called the Millennial Veterans with two of her friends in 2020 to reach out to younger veterans in the hopes of creating a community. Their goal to get younger veterans involved and aware of their resources. Jenna hosts an Instagram live series called Vet Chats, where she interviews younger veterans on how they're continuing their service. It takes place on Sundays at 9 p.m., or you can catch the replay on her podcast, Vet Chats. I also was on that, so go check that out. Together, we're making the veteran community a better place for all. Jenna, I'm so excited to have you here. I had such a blast on your vet chats, and I'm so excited to hear your side of the story. So thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, Rachel. I'm so excited to be a guest because I am a pretty much a weekly listener of your podcast. So I'm honored to be here.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for the support. It means so much to me. I'm going to pass it off to you so you can share your story.
Great. So I joined the Navy right when I got out of high school in 2013. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my life. I'm from a really small town, so I thought joining the Navy would be one of the only ways I could really get out of Wisconsin. So I went in as a weather girl, which is kind of a rare job in the Navy. There's not too many weather people. It was a lot of studying. It was a really hard A school, and I wanted to get sea duty, so I went and I was on an aircraft carrier. I was out of Norfolk, Virginia, so I went on a few different platforms. I went on a hospital ship, two LHDs, so I got to get a taste of all the different lifestyles in the Navy. It was a learning experience, but I knew it wasn't where I wanted to be. So I decided to get out and pursue college. Wasn't sure what I wanted to do in college, and I ended up in the Maryland, DC area. And I thought, why not try politics? I'm by Capitol Hill. And I got involved with veteran politics, which is where I did my internship. And that's when I kind of really claimed my identity as a veteran, because I saw just like the benefits, all the resources of really tapping into the veteran community. And I didn't see that before, probably because when you first get out, you kind of disassociate, or you want to like separate yourself from the military. And so I started to lean into it, but I realized that, the bureaucracy of Congress, there's so many egos fighting each other, that it wasn't the best place. So I decided to just kind of reach out to the people I knew organically through my Facebook group. And it's kind of led me to so many different things in the veteran community. So yeah, and that's kind of what I'm doing now.
That's super cool. I like how you talked about veteran identity, because it's so true. Like there's not like a huge, I don't know, like I don't even know how to explain it. Like I remember getting out, I didn't consider myself a veteran. And I think to this day,
Yeah.
there's times when I don't really like see myself as a veteran, and like coming into that identity is like a whole process because it's easy to say like, oh, I'm in the military because that's like the people
Hmm.
you're around, right? But then it's like when you get out, um, it's like it's a whole different thing. And so yeah, it's really cool that you were able to go that route to grow into the identity. I'm curious on the political side because you mentioned that there's the bureaucracy and all these things that kind of are like a barrier to entry. What types of things did you see working on the veteran side that made you disinterested in continuing that path?
There was not a good thing. So the good news is veteran politics is usually bipartisan. So both parties are very much in support. It's not like a Republican thing or a Democrat thing. Everyone supports veterans. America does for the most part. It's more of getting on the agenda, and it's sad. But when we saw like an uptick in suicides and people like veterans killing themselves in parking lots of VAs, there was a whole streak of that, and that's what got it on the agenda. And it's like that problems are always been there, but it takes a big news story, something tragic to happen for it to get on the agenda, for people to start talking about it, for them to write policy about it. And that was disheartening because policy is so reactive instead of proactive, especially when we have so many voices in our community telling their concerns, but they're not listened to unless there's a story, unless there's that pressure from the public of, hey, we want change. We want you guys to do something about it. So that was kind of disheartening, and also a lot of who created this bill, who's going to be the name of this bill. We're going to push it because the Democrats made it, or we're going to push it because the Republicans made it. And that was kind of hard because I was the one answering the phones. I was hearing the veterans calling in daily, complaining for their life, pretty much asking for help. And they didn't know where to start. They Googled veterans, they got this number, and then they get me on the line. So I was feeling that pain through every phone call, and then seeing the kind of dance that was going on, and that was pretty frustrating.
That's hard. Yeah, I anytime there's like politics involved in anything, it always adds like an extra layer, right? Because it's like, how is it gonna look from like a political standpoint, from a media standpoint? And it really sucks because I think that's one of the biggest barriers in the military community in general. It's like, when you talk to someone and you're like, hey, people are taking their lives, it's like, oh, well, but this program's in place. But it's like, okay, but how effective is that program? Well, this survey says this. Okay, but are people being realistic in these surveys, or are they being gaslit in these surveys from people around them that are telling them, or maybe they just don't have the energy to take a survey? I mean, there's so many different things to it. Was there a piece when you were serving active duty that you think pushed you to want to go into something later on to really help veterans out? Or do you think that what you're doing now and helping on all these avenues really came from like from after the fact?
Yeah, so I feel like when I was in on deployment, I wanted to know why we were there, what were the politics behind it. So I became really fascinated by politics just because I was wondering, why am I sitting on this ship in the Arabian Gulf? Like what's the bigger picture? So that kind of piqued my interest. But honestly, I feel like a lot of people have this mindset in the military. You don't picture what comes next. You're not thinking about being a veteran and what that includes. I mean, you might be thinking about applying for school, applying for disability, but you're not thinking of that bigger veteran issue. So honestly, I just applied to do any internship, and my professor was like, "Hey, you're a veteran. Why don't you apply for one of the veteran offices?" And I was like, "That's a great idea. Yeah." Because I didn't even consider myself, like a veteran was significant. Like that was a significant part of who I was. Um,
That's cool. Okay, so I wanted to talk about your time served in reference to an Instagram post that you did, because you did a post about like when you were serving and smoking and all the unhealthy things. and how, that changes as you get out and you kind of grow into yourself, right? So I want to get a little bit deeper and talk about the things that we deal with on active duty and the behaviors that they cause, and maybe things that we don't recognize when we're active duty that we maybe recognize later when we get out of the military, and what that experience was like for you.
Yes, yeah. So I feel like it's very much a cultural thing to drink, to smoke, to have all these unhealthy habits because it's like at some points that's all we have, especially when you've been gone, you've been underway, you just want to come home and forget everything that you just went through. And you can't, I mean, it is like a cultural thing, even in the song, like drink to the foam. It's kind of like a badge of honor to drink and to who drinks more. And also, I've kind of recently realized that a lot of those behaviors were me kind of coping with everything and some like trauma that I went through during that time. And it just continued in that unhealthy behavior. And it was so easy because you're surrounded by that. Everybody wants to go out, everybody has alcohol. When you're stuck in the barracks room, what else are you going to do? So it's very much just kind of ingrained in that culture of the military.
Absolutely. Are you comfortable talking about what you went through?
Yes, and I appreciate your podcast so much because you're one of the few women out there, women veterans that are out there. It's so important that we show up. But I feel so comfortable on this podcast because you've talked about stuff like that before. But I'd like to talk about just how long it takes you to realize, like after, so I'm just getting help for military sexual trauma through the VA. It's taken me eight years since it, and it's not because it's almost part of it is because I didn't realize it. I didn't understand that that's what was going on in some of the cases. So it's been like a journey recently to go through and connect all the dots. And when you realize like that is why I was acting like that, that's why I was so crazy, like partying a lot, and it was kind of just coping. So yeah.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. I think that, a lot of these people that get kicked out, a lot of these people that are labeled as, partiers or crazy, or even people that get in trouble for things, we don't look at the bigger picture of, okay, most people don't just show up and act in erratic ways, erratic being chain
Yeah.
smoking, drinking like, every single night, um being defiant, doing the least amount of work at their job every single day, showing up late, and no one's looking at these bigger picture things. So I appreciate that you shared
Hmm.
that, and I also appreciate that you're talking about how it took you a while to figure that out, because I hear from a lot of people, oh, well, if someone's raped, why don't they just report? Why don't they just, call the
Yes.
cops and, good to go? But it's like, how many times, no matter how many trainings they do, because even the trainings, like I know they're trying to make them better, but I still feel like the trainings are very specific scenarios. They're very like the Navy likes to harp on the like, don't no consent, like don't have sex while you both are drinking. And
Hmm.
then, a lot of other trainings are like, back of an alley, someone's walking by themselves, and that happens, right? And no one's really talking about those more common circumstances,
Hmm.
um which can really vary like from person to person. Like at the end of the day, it's how we feel and how comfortable we are, and I think they should be focusing more on that. So yeah, if you're comfortable sharing what happened to you, I think that there's a lot of value in that. And I also know how incredibly hard it is to share that stuff because I've shared my own story on here. So
Yes.
I'll leave it up to you if that's something that you want to share with the listeners. But I think it'd be really valuable if you are comfortable sharing.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's so important to share. Okay, so there's like multiple ones, and the first one was kind of like I realized it right away. like that was sexual assault. That was not okay. And you know, we have different responses to things, and I definitely fawned because they apologized. They told me that wasn't their behavior. And I even like hung out with them again after, you know, and looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, why would you do that? And the hardest part about that is that I had one of my best friends call me like 3 years after saying that he had raped her. And I was like, you know, like that eats at me. I know I can't blame myself for not reporting, but knowing what I know now, like I wish I could have done something. But again, you can't carry that guilt with you. And then that happening to me, I had so much shame around it because I was dating someone, and you know, I didn't even want to really bring it up. And also I had so many friends tell me that it wasn't a big deal. And yeah, and that kind of led me into a relationship that was pretty much very abusive. And you know, you don't look at like even like rape can happen in a relationship. I think that's important to talk about too, especially when you're so young and you're naive, or maybe if you're dating someone that's higher up in your command, they might, you know, you might feel that pressure, and that's so scary. And then so yeah, I'm just like, I'm not ready to talk about all of it, but
No, that's
I just
okay.
wanted to.
Yeah, I think there's value in what you're saying, because I personally can relate to a lot of that. That I can relate especially to the like people saying it's not a big deal, because you know, I think everyone has their own like life circumstances prior to joining the military.
Yeah, I
How old
was
were you when you
19.
joined? 19? Yeah. So yeah, I mean, you're still young, right? Like you haven't even learned at 19 a lot of life in general. Like I remember being 19 and feeling like I was an adult, right? But I look back now and I'm like, I was
Yeah.
still incredibly young, even in my early 20s. And so to experience something like that. And then I think at that age, a lot of us really look for validation in our peers. And so, you know, I remember when I was sexually assaulted and going to work and saying, hey, this happened to me, and not really processing it as a sexual assault, but like not feeling right. Like something did not feel right. And
Mm-hmm.
I knew that. I think had the people around me said, oh my gosh, you were sexually assaulted. What can we do to help you? How can we support you? I would have reported it. But because everyone was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, well, that's not a big deal. This happened because you did this. I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'm
Mm-hmm.
wrong. And I don't know if that's how you felt in those circumstances, but I think that happens a lot.
Yes, I felt you know, and that causes so much harm because we blame ourselves. I shouldn't have been that drunk. I shouldn't have been at someone's room with a bunch of guys. You know, it's just like so many of those things. And then yeah, it's like I wish I would have went with my gut instinct. But I also like to talk about how it's because you mentioned the trainings, and they're always kind of almost violent, and instead of it being more like they're coercing you into it, you know, sometimes it looks like that. And then also, when I first checked into my command, there was a case going on, and it was everyone was saying that this girl got, you know, she had dick remorse, and she was raped, and she was going through the process of getting someone in trouble, and everyone was like saying that about her. And so I kind of, you know, absorbed that and said like, oh, that must have been like me, like that must have been my story, even though, you know, it's totally different.
Yeah, you know, I remember being in A school and hearing like one of my friends was sexually assaulted, and I remember it going around like everyone that we knew saying like, "Oh, she just like she made it up," or like, you know, she's just being a snitch or something. And I think that's such a common thing, like because it obviously if someone in a command is being accused of something like rape, like that's a very heavy word, and no one wants to be called a
Mm-hmm.
rapist or you know a sexual assaulter or anything like that. And so people automatically get defensive. And you know, I was talking to someone earlier today, and someone who actually works with the VA, and she was telling me that she went and talked to the chaplain on the base near me, and they were thinking about like starting like suicide prevention programs for active duty. And I looked at her and I was like, I think that there are certain programs that should not be handled by active duty, sexual assault and suicide. And I was like, the reason
Mhm.
is because the military is such a high school like environment that word gets around and there's no privacy. And people aren't comfortable reporting things or talking to people. Because, yeah, on one hand, people don't know how to handle it. And yeah, that's where training could come in handy. But if I know that I was sexually assaulted and the person that I have to talk to is someone that I know runs their mouth to everyone, there's zero privacy there. I mean, it's just that I think is one of the layers, one of the many layers that causes stuff like that and makes people very uncomfortable, especially the younger people that are showing up to these commands and don't even know like what it's like to be in the military, much less go through trauma, and maybe not really process that it's trauma, and then having zero support from people around them. I mean, I think there's so many layers to this that the government, getting back into the political thing, like the government really tries to throw trainings and programs out. But you're right, like the trainings, I think they have to keep them very like niche and specific because
Mhm.
it has to fall like in a certain, I don't know, there's rules and like everything has to be approved, and like it's hard to train like a large group of people on things and have it be effective. And I think the sapper trainings are supposed to be in smaller groups, but you get these large
Mm.
commands of thousands of people and they're like, oh well, we got to get this training done by October 1st, so we're just gonna knock everyone out at the same time, throw a PowerPoint on a screen, good to go. And like I'm even guilty of doing a training like that because I was a sapper
Yeah.
victim advocate and we had to get like a bunch of trainings done and people didn't have time. And so,
Mhm.
it's like where do we begin to make people feel safer so they don't have to deal with what we went through, Like I don't even know. Sometimes like it's so hard to like say this would be the solution that would fix everything.
Yes. Yeah. There's got to be a culture shift in the military. How that starts, I'm not sure, but I think it'd just be even like more training. Like I don't know. I don't want to blame the problem on men, but maybe there should be like more of a accountability. Like there were so many cases where the guys would be talking about it and nobody speaks up. Nobody wants to say something because, that's just what you do. You keep your mouth shut. Just like if you heard someone cheating on deployment, like you just keep your mouth shut. And it's like if somebody would have spoke up for me that knew what happened because I had told male friends what happened, and it's just kind of, yeah, I don't know what
Yeah.
what you
Yeah.
could
It's
really
it's
do.
hard. It's hard when you feel like you have no one in your corner and it's like, or the people that you do have in your corner, you're just kind of talking behind closed doors because it's like, well, can I say something without being labeled as that person? And one wrong conversation, I don't know if people outside of the military really understand this, but one wrong conversation, wrong in quotations, could literally ruin your entire career because it is so much about like who you know and how you look. And I have seen people not rank advance that deserve to be rank advance. Like they couldn't pass the test in the Navy, and maybe they could have been mapped, but someone didn't like them, something like that. And then I've seen people, people liked them, and then they got mapped rank advance to the next level, meritoriously promoted for people that don't know what that is because of who they were. And so yeah, I mean, that when you talk about the culture shift, that's what I really like to focus on is that culture part, because I understand that the political part and the red tape and trying to change programs is so hard. But I
Mhm.
wanted to shift the conversation a little bit to talk about what you're doing now, because that is part of that culture shift. And I really love how you do the vet chats and you bring on the different guests. And there's some guests that I've listened to that I'm like, wow, like you're just like a master networker or something because you have some incredible people that come on your show. And I always love, getting to know them a little bit more after your conversation with them too. And so talk to us a little bit more about what you're doing now and what's your vision with that.
Well, thank you so much. And it happened. So when I started this Facebook group, it was just my friends because I had so many people asking me about benefits, and I was the person to go to because I was working up there. And so my friends started throwing other friends, and we're like, all right, let's see how many people we can get in here. And then people started introducing themselves right away. And I was like, wow, like so many younger veterans are out here doing really great stuff. They're continuing their service, whether they're, raising a family, whether they're working as a contractor. So I just got so inspired by these stories, and I thought, why not interview? And my first couple of vet chats were just me and one of my friends, someone I met in the group. It was just a lot of fun just to share what they're up to now. And it's kind of formed into um, just all these different younger veterans, whether they're a part of a nonprofit, you see they're raising awareness for mental health, they're writing books. It's just so inspiring, and I feel like I get more out of it than they do because I really want to understand the veteran community, and I feel like this is the best way.
Yeah, so are you looking to expand that at all into anything else, or are you looking to just continue doing what you're doing with the vet chats every Sunday, or do you have anything planned or in the works?
I do have something that I'm working on. So kind of through like all my posts, I've reflected a lot on my service and my identity as a veteran, and I've connected with others and heard what they were saying on how they succeeded after service. And so much of it was just kind of reflecting, and I like to journal a lot. So I decided to create kind of a workbook for veterans to recreate themselves after service, define what they want out of life after the military, because it's so scary when you get out. You're not sure who you are. You lose that sense. You can't go back to the high schooler you were. That's not going to work. And you can't go back to who you were in the military because that person got out for a reason. You want to do something else. You got out because you had a vision for yourself. So this kind of helps people, helps veterans reflect on that and recreate themselves. So that's what I've been working on. And then just kind of the group's going. We have almost daily questions that are fun to answer, and hear everyone's so comical on there. There's lots of memes. And then with the vet chats, I hope to keep that up as long as I can.
That's awesome. I'm super excited for that journal. You'll have to let me know when you release it. I know a lot of
Yes,
people are going to
I'm sending
find,
you one.
yeah, I love it. I love it. I can't wait. I know so many people are going to find value in that because I talk to a lot of people, and the one of the biggest things that people struggle with is that transition, whether they've been in for 4 years, 20 years. I mean, 4 years, we make it seem like it's a short period of time, I think, because we compare it to the people who do 20 to 30, the lifers, but
Mhm.
4 years is a decent chunk of life, and people really do change so much. There's so much growth and forgetting that old person that we were. And, I think a lot of people try to go back to that person when they move back to their hometown, but like so much can change in a year, much less 4 years. And so, I think it's great that you have something that is helping guide and define that, vision of like, who do you want to be now that you're out of the military? Because you can be anyone you want to be. I mean, that's a blank slate. And so that's awesome. I'm really excited for that. I don't actually think I'm in your Facebook group, so I'll have to join that one. And anyone else that's listening will have to join as well. And also make sure you go follow her on Instagram. I'm going to give you a second here to share where people can find you, because I know what your Instagram stuff is and I will post it in the notes, but go ahead and share with everyone where exactly they can find you online.
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at the Millennial Veteran. And then the Facebook group is called the Millennial Veterans. So nice and easy, really searchable, and join us. I mean, we're a small group. but everyone's, I kind of I like that because it feels cozy. It feels like we all know each other.
I love it. And then one of these days, maybe we can all get together in person across the US or wherever we're at. That'd be super cool. I would love to plan something like that. Jenna, it's been such a pleasure having you on the show to share your story and share what you're doing. And I usually give people a heads up for this last question, but I forgot to. So I'm going to throw this one at you. Any last words that you have for our listeners as we close out?
Oh my gosh, I had something that I was thinking of, and now as soon as I get put on the spot, I'm like, oh no. I would just say I read this really actually I listened to a lot of podcasts and I listened to something kind of interesting. And it's not really related to anything we were talking about, but it was kind of talking about how our brains are programmed to find negative. They're programmed to find danger. And so we're always looking for danger, which, causes anxiety, but we need to, like, our brains aren't looking for happiness. It's not going to be automatic. That's something we have to actively work on. So that's something I'll share is I've been really paying attention to my thoughts and what my brain's paying attention to. And that's been kind of helping me. So there's like my mental health tip, I guess.
Solid. It's so true. And I get in rabbit holes of this stuff all the time. So appreciate you sharing that. Appreciate you sharing your story. I appreciate everything you're doing. I don't know how you keep up with everything, but your content's amazing. What you're doing is amazing. The work you're doing is amazing. And you are making such an impact. So thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate you so much, Jenna. Thank you for taking the time to listen in today. With your support, we are able to increase awareness of the mental health issues affecting service members and veterans today with the goal of creating positive change. If you got value from this episode, please take 30 seconds to subscribe and share this episode within your own network. Until next time, remember, your story matters, your mental health matters, and your story doesn't end here.